8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
community, we will sustain America's journey.
In his address, the president sounded the centrist themes he adopted to win re-election, but he offered no new bold initiatives.
As times change, so government must change. We need a new government for a new century. A government that is smaller, lives within its means, and does more with less.
He called for a new sense of personal responsibility to pick up where government leaves off.
There is work to do, work that government alone cannot do. Teaching children to read, hiring people off welfare rolls, coming out from behind locked doors and shuttered windows to help reclaim our streets from drugs and gangs and crime.
Mr. Clinton repeated his calls for a balanced budget and for fixing Medicare and Social Security, as well as preserving the environment. And with investigations looming over his party's fundraising practices, he once again called for campaign finance reform.
So that the voice of the people will always speak louder than the din of narrow interests.
And he called on Democrats and Republicans to end their partisan warfare.
The American people returned to office a president of one party and a Congress of another. Surely they did not do this to advance the politics of petty bickering and extreme partisanship they plainly deplore.
On this day commemorating Martin Luther King's birthday, he echoed the civil rights leader's call for a colorblind nation.
For any one of us to succeed, we must succeed as one America. The challenge of our past remains the challenge of our future. Will we be one nation, one people with one common destiny or not? Will we all come together or come apart?
Then the president took a clear swipe at the conservative right.
The divide of race has been America's constant curse. And each new wave of immigrants gives new targets to old prejudices. Prejudice and contempt, cloaked in the pretense of religious or political convictions, are no different.
This year's nominees for Best Performance by an Actress in Motion Picture Drama are Brenda Blethyn, Secrets and Lies; Courtney Love, The People vs. Larry Flint; Meryl, and the winner is Brenda Blethyn, Secrets and Lies.
do things that have enduring value when there is so much competition. Art is unthinkable, even impossible, unless there is an emotional, spiritual, and commercial risk. And every artist's work takes that risk of portraying that journey through himself or herself. When an artist's risk-taking is understood, that risk is praised. When it is misunderstood, it can be devastating. When an artist's risk-taking is understood, that risk is praised. When it is misunderstood, it can be devastating. When an artist's risk-taking is understood, that risk is praised. When it is misunderstood, it can be devastating. When an artist's risk-taking is understood, that risk is praised. When it is misunderstood, it can be devastating.
Offensively. Let's listen in. Gary Locke's inaugural address.
What now?
Inaugural address.
What now?
And Gary Locke's inaugural address.
What now? Now. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, Madam Chief Justice, distinguished members of the Washington State Supreme Court, to our statewide elected officials, members of the Washington State Legislature, and other elected officials from across this state, members of the Consular Corps, fellow citizens, members of the Consular Corps, fellow citizens, members of the Consular Corps, fellow citizens, members of the Consular Corps, fellow citizens. And in fact, we should just have all the relatives stand up. Will all the relatives stand up who have come long and far? Please stand up. On the Lee side, the Ing side, and the Locke side. Those are just the aunts and uncles. The cousins are downstairs. This is truly a wonderful day for the Locke clan. This is truly a wonderful day for the Locke clan. And it's really a wonderful day for the Locke clan. And for the Locke clan. For the Locke clan. And it's great to see so many relatives return to Olympia for this celebration. And I say return because our family has its roots in Olympia. One of our ancestors, a distant cousin actually, came. Our family has its roots in Olympia. One of our ancestors, a distant cousin actually, came. One of our ancestors, a distant cousin actually, came. One of our ancestors, a distant cousin actually, came. One of our ancestors, a distant cousin actually, came to Olympia in 1874 and became a leader of the Chinese American community just a few blocks from this state capital. He acted as a bridge between the Chinese and white communities and became friends with other downtown merchants and the sheriff, William Billings. Citizens of Olympia, the mob gradually dispersed. Not a single shot was fired, and not a single Chinese home was burned. For the Locke clan, that incident helped establish a deep sense and a deep faith in the essential goodness of mainstream American values. Billings and the heroes of Olympia history. And our journey was successful because the Locke family embraces three values: get a good education, work hard, and take care of each other. From sending telegrams to sending email, and from cooking on wood stoves to cooking in microwave ovens. And I want our state to be known as a place where elected officials lead by example.
Not a pathologist. She's not qualified to offer an opinion as to the accuracy of that autopsy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, but it's all under her department, and
it's all under your department. You are the King County executive.
I stand by my people.
It is your responsibility to order an inquest in a case of violent death. Do you understand? A case of unresolved violent death.
Hi,
Sharon Stewart Johnson.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Locke, Ms. Stewart Johnson's own document is contradictory. It says that there was massive destruction of the head, and yet little or no blood was present at the scene of the crime. How is that possible? You've had 2 years to address this issue, sir. It involves the violent homicide of the leading citizen of the city of Seattle.
And hello and good evening and welcome to our inaugural day storm of commentary. That being a reference to, of course, the inaugural day storm. Was it 4 years ago? Right. So, not too much storming that we're going to do this evening, really, but you know, with all of our deference to the standards of good taste that we try to practice here at the Kurt Show, we just wonder if in the cause of good taste in our time we're really getting anywhere. And of course you only need to look as far as this item. The governor of details. The governor of Dick's Burgers and Fries. I guess the details that they're referring to here are never leaving a dot, an I undotted in terms of doing the proper public relations thing. That is, right up until the very end, here he is doing that phony baloney all-American campaign thing in the last days before he assumes the office of governor of the state of Washington, going to have a nice meal at Dick's Drive-In. And so the details that the Seattle Times was apparently referring to, you might guess, would be a relentless campaigner. Although, of course, based on our experience and undoubtedly on the experience that others have had with Mr. Locke, getting him to pay attention to the details of administration rather than campaigning is somewhat more of a challenge, to say the least. And comment on that just a little bit more later, but see what the problem is there, that as details go, political discourse tends to, despite the absolute onslaught of political commentary that you're able to get, so little of it has to do with details. That is an actual examination of fact, you know, the sort of thing that you're likely to get in terms of the roundtable discussions, where, you know, George Will and Cokie Roberts, etc., are just likely to want to spew their own point of view for corporate sponsors or whomever, rather than giving us any substantive fact material at all. And one exception to that is that I did notice George Will et al. Commenting on the content of the Clinton inaugural speech. And this is one of those, it does happen with all major addresses, but in terms of historicity, the inaugural speeches of presidents do get a lot of attention by people who are doing analysis of this sort of thing, either seriously or just because, like George Will, they get paid to do it. And, you know, ask not what your country can do for you. As I understand it, that was a slogan that he stole from the headmaster at his boarding school, JFK. That is, the guy used to say exactly, ask not what your school can do for you. Which, once you know that, I think it was either Choate, I think it was the Choate School. I think JFK attended more than one, having been kicked out of one, and then I think he attended Choate, where he picked up that nice phrase. Anyway, so they do, inaugural speeches actually get put under the light of scrutiny more so than other presidential statements. And as most commentators were saying immediately after the Clintonian address this morning, or it was, you know, this morning here, it was high noon there in Washington, D.C., there really was a sad lack of content and vision to Mr. Clinton's speech. And that, of course, could only be expected. We played a little bit of it there. The president calls for campaign finance reform, which, you know, again, I don't need to go over the whole history for all of you who are well informed, but, you know, if there had been campaign finance reform before Mr. Clinton took office, he would never have become president. So it was early and generous corporate sponsorship that put him in the lead of the Democratic PAC in 1988, and that is why he is our president today. And of course, the rest of it has all been nonsense and scandal, including scandal related to campaign finance from Mr. Clinton. Also, we did play a little bit of Gary Locke's speech, that is his inaugural speech. And if you think that Clinton's was a dud by any standards, JFK standards or FDR standards or anyone else's standards, you know, Clinton had 12 people or more working on his reportedly. I would guess that Mr. Locke did this as a solo effort. That is, there didn't seem to be much of any compositional thought put into it. He merely got up there and just to take a minute or two to do a brief analysis of what he did. Ironically, those of you who enjoy the world of cinema may have noticed that Mr. Locke, his first words as governor after taking the oath were, "What now?" And that's not a quote from Alfred E. Newman. In fact, that is a quote, as Mr. Locke well knows, from that Robert Redford film from the mid-'70s, directed by one Michael Ritchie, if I recall correctly. The Candidate, which is actually still one of the few films that's ever really looked at the electoral process from the point of view of the candidate. And I don't know to what extent Mr. Locke is into the movies or not, but being that he's been a lifelong political aspirant, certainly he's aware of that movie. It probably formed a lot of his youthful ambitions and thoughts about the political process. And then he gets elected governor, and his first words are, "What now?" which is what Redford says at the end of the film after he's been elected. And in the film, and believe me, critics have written a lot about that film, there's only one way to interpret that statement in the Michael Ritchie movie, and that is that it's an extremely telling statement by the candidate that he's hollow and really without ideas other than being good at campaigning and good at getting that job, does not really have that much to do with the job of governing. And so Redford says at the end of that film, "What now? What do we do now?" And it's a sort of an ironic, bittersweet ending, but it's supposed to be exemplary of what is wrong with the political process. And then there is Mr. Locke quoting the film in his first words as governor. I don't know what the intent of the speech was. It was at noon, and I guess they're going to show it on TVW, but most people, of course, did not see the inaugural address by Mr. Locke because it was at noon, and most of them aren't as fanatical about taping things as I am. But just to look at a few of the bizarre, moments in his short speech, George Will even commented this morning that it was interesting that Mr. Clinton began his speech, "My fellow citizens," which is, given that Clinton is sometimes referred to as a populist president, that is appropriate, and in fact, it might be appropriate for all presidents to do what, as George Will explained, FDR did, which was to begin your new administration by addressing "my fellow citizens," rather than going through the antique process of saying, Mr. Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice, fellow elected officials, blah, blah, blah. It's an antique form of addressing one's constituency because, of course, it's the voters that put the chief of state in office, not the guy who happened to administer the oath, which in this case was William Rehnquist. And so, in fact, Locke did the opposite. Locke adopted the antique variety of addressing the delegation surrounded around him by addressing the Supreme Court Justice of the state of Washington and then fellow elected officials, and then in an absolute faux pas that, does not look very good here, although I doubt that very many people noticed it. Locke addresses the consular corps. He addresses them by saying, the consular corps, and then says, and fellow citizens of the state of Washington. And of course, the whole idea of going through the laundry list of those assembled around you is that you do it in this antique fashion, in reverse order of importance of the moment. So in this antique fashion, elected officials are considered more important than "my fellow citizens," which Clinton was aware of, and which he dodged out of by beginning "my fellow citizens." Locke, on the other hand, addressed the consular corps before he addressed "my fellow citizens." In other words, in descending order of importance, foreign lobbyists, the most despised people in the nation, according to just about everybody who is thoughtful on what is happening to the country today, from the left, Norman Orenstein, to Kevin Phillips on the right, foreign lobbyists, as Ross Perot says, foreign lobbyists are, really a very significant problem that needs to be dealt with in terms of campaign finance reform. And of course, as we've detailed in our webpage and in our comments here, Mr. Locke has a vast, huge problem with what his relationship is, has always been, and will continue to be now that he's governor, with foreign lobbyists, which you can also refer to as the consular corps. Those are foreign lobbyists with the diplomatic immunity, people who are actually in many ways above the law, and parking tickets and everything else. So you'd have to call that a very distasteful faux pas, one which will probably translate well in bootleg copies of that video that may be marketed in Asian countries for those who are interested, but it does not translate and it does not echo very well here that these are virtually his first words as governor, slighting the citizens in favor of foreign lobbyists. He also made repeated references to Clan Locke, which, you can come up with your own one-liner about the propriety of a guy getting up there and talking about Clan Locke, but, just to offer my one-liner, how many of you who did vote for him would have voted for him if you realized he was a member of the Klan, or a Klan? obviously, for a non-Chinese elected official to get up there and use the K word, or I guess in his case it's the C word, the Klan word, would be a horrendous mistake. I mean, even if you're Scottish, you don't get up there and start thanking your clan. It's rather horrifying, as a matter of fact. And in fact, the Locke clan was referred to twice. It was no mistake. And when he got into talking about the values of the Locke family, get a good education, work hard, and take care of each other, one was not entirely sure what Locke family he was talking about, mom and dad and him and the wife, or is he talking about this extended family of apparently scores of Locke family members who attended. And, you know, just to wrap up our comments on this, he painted one member of the Locke clan as a hero of Olympia history, that is, a distant cousin who immigrated in 1874, and who became, as Locke said, a leader of the Chinese community, and a bridge between the Chinese and white communities, Locke said. We're getting toward, was that the 5-minute warning or the 2-minute warning?
2 minutes.
All right. Well, we're getting, unfortunately, near the end of our commentary period here, and, you know, today, of all days, I don't want to do the bad taste thing of you know, bringing up ethnicity in any way that's going to make anyone uncomfortable, except to ask that you indulge us and trust that our heart is in the right place on this thing. When we say that, you know, the sort of emphasis that Mr. Locke is putting into his ethnicity in his administration from the first moments of it are very distasteful, very disturbing, and we would hope not a harbinger of regrettable relationships with non-citizen persons and business people and corporations primarily, as his administration develops. Although, of course, you need look only as far as the Nintendo Mariners to understand that getting the taxpayers to pony up dollars to support extremely affluent Asian corporations is precisely what Mr. Locke is all about. This will be the test case, and it may be put to a vote. But just to relate this back to what we're all about, obviously, when a guy is so busy you know, currying the favor and doing favors for foreign corporations, he really has very little time to attend to the business of government, which includes his lack of foresight and lack of fortitude in dealing with the situation of the homicide of Kurt Cobain. And thanks for joining us, and have a great evening.
phone calls tonight, huh?
Oh, you know, what's the point? Yeah, I'll do that. But, you know, I think people are now, like, so used to me not doing phone calls that they're not really ready with questions and stuff. So I'll give an early warning in the show sometime that I'm going to do it.